first known free black person in Natchez was connected to the Natchez Indians and their struggle against French intrusion. In 1723, violence erupted between the French and the Natchez Indians, who dominated the region. The French were keenly aware of the role that black people played in the backcountry of their empire. On November 23, 1723, the minutes of the Superior Council of Louisiana reported a French ultimatum to end the current conflict with the Natchez Indians. This demand read that they, the Natchez Indians, bring in dead or alive a Negro who has taken refuge among them for a long time and who makes them seditious speeches against the French nation and who has followed them on occasions against our Indian allies. In the aftermath of the rebellion, France essentially vacated the district, and there are no records of free Africans in the area until Natchez became part of British West Florida under the Treaty of Paris in 1763. The British tried unsuccessfully to establish plantations and to bring larger slave population to Natchez. Although records are few, there were at least 2 free people of color present in Natchez between 1763 and 1779. One, a woman named Nellie Price, is of particular note. She challenged social norms and openly defied a leading English merchant. Although Price's stand ultimately led to a physical altercation, she managed to escape further punishment and reappeared frequently in Spanish records. Free black people continued to use the Spanish courts in their favor. Black men used the courts to sue for debts owed to them or to reclaim property, and Spanish courts ruled according to the evidence. A black man named James received payment owed to him for a load of grain that had been previously bought by 2 white inhabitants of Natchez. Negress Betty sued for an outstanding bill against James Willing, the infamous raider, and won her claim. As mentioned, Nellie Price was regularly in court, suing for services rendered and for outstanding debts, and she was frequently successful. Samba, a free man from New Orleans, was able to buy and subsequently free his daughter Nanette, according to Spanish legal custom in Natchez. Although many of the free blacks in Spanish Natchez were able to take advantage of the new laws, many more did not. From the time of their first arrival in Natchez, slaves resisted bondage. Slavery existed in Natchez beginning in 1719 and continued through French, British, Spanish, and finally American rule. Then, in 1863, in the midst of the war between the states, U.S. President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, which freed all slaves in the South. The relative calm of Natchez slaves ended with the American Revolution. Slaves knew that here was an opportunity to seize their freedom. The best example of slave resistance in Natchez during the American Revolution, from 1776 to 1783, occurred in July 1776. According to the diary of plantation owner William Dunbar, a slave had approached his master with a stunning revelation that Natchez slaves were plotting a rebellion and that the uprising had been planned at Dunbar's plantation. To prevent this insurrection from happening, Dunbar and his fellow slave owners rounded up their slaves, questioned and tortured them, forcing them to confess. One of Dunbar's slaves was in a boat when he was questioned by the slave owners, and instead of confessing as the other slaves had done, he jumped overboard and drowned himself in the river. Other would-be rebels were put on trial, found guilty of conspiracy, and executed. Free black people occupied the lowest rung in Natchez free society, yet they often did invaluable work for the community. They served as warriors, farmhands, midwives, maids, traders, and as companions in a frontier town starved of white female settlers. Free blacks saw their fate twist in the wind as French, British, Spanish, and American customs and laws broadly influenced their legal standing in society. With the governance of Natchez changing hands at alarmingly frequent intervals, they had to brave these changes head on. As the emperor rulers of Natchez shifted, the liberty of free people of color remained on unstable footing. Free African Americans, however, are an important part of Mississippi's history, and by studying their lives, it allows us to open a window into a world often ignored by contemporary Mississippians. Following the stories of free people of color leads to evidence of the struggle that was the settlement of Natchez, the violence it entailed, and the instability of personal fortunes in the Old Southwest. By tracing the personal fates of free black people in Natchez in relation to social upheaval and imperial change, we can gain a more complete understanding of the origin of Mississippi society. Unlike common perception or misconception, Mississippi's origins are not found in the mansions of antebellum plantations, but in the fight to survive colonial disorder. Free people of color were always a part of that story, and their frequent absence in Natchez printed history should be remedied.